The cardboard box remained open on the hardwood floor, its flaps tucked back like a bird's wings. I hadn't even unpacked the bedding when my phone buzzed. I wiped my hands on my jeans and picked up without glancing at the screen. I didn't need to. Only one person called with that kind of insistence. "Hey, Calvana, heads up, we're about 2 hours out. Got 20 of us coming from my side. I told them you've got plenty of room. If you could set up the bedrooms, that'd be awesome. Oh, and food, obviously." That was it. No hesitation, no, is now okay? No, congrats on the new house. It felt like a delivery alert, not a conversation. I stayed quiet for a moment, letting her words sink in like ash. Then I said, "Okay." Because I've learned that's the safest response when someone isn't asking for your opinion. When the call ended, I stood still, hearing the faint groan of the new house settling. I'd only been here 3 days. My name was still fresh on the deed, sitting in a folder on the counter. My name, nobody else's. Yet somehow, Kinley had already turned my home into her family's vacation spot. I didn't pace or cry. Instead, I walked to the kitchen, opened a drawer, and pulled out a yellow legal pad. I flipped to a blank page, wrote the date at the top, and drew a line down the center. On one side, groceries, towels, garbage bags, sleeping arrangements. On the other, legal enforcement paperwork duplicates. I underlined duplicates twice. The garage held 22 chairs left by the previous owner. I'd counted them last week with a quiet thrill I hadn't felt in years. I'd pictured them filled with friends, laughter, shared meals. Not this. But they were coming whether I wanted it or not. So I chose to focus on something else, boundaries. I went to the guest room, swapped out the sheets, and hummed, not out of joy but strategy. By the time I fluffed the second pillow, I'd already made my first call. For years, I'd made do. Rooms that weren't mine. Kitchens I moved through like a guest. After Roger died, Camden had said, "Just until you're back on your feet, Mom." I believed him. I always did. But 6 years later, I was still in their basement, folding their clothes, making lunches no one thanked me for. They didn't charge rent. Kinley loved reminding me of that, but they took everything else. My time, my energy, my voice. That's why this house mattered. Not for its size, its lake view, or the fresh bathroom tiles. It was mine, paid for in full. I'd saved for it the way others save for vacations or new cars. No loans, no co-signers, no shared deed. But even before Kinley's call, I knew it wouldn't be easy. She'd always treated my belongings like community property. If I made cookies, she took them to her book club. If I bought new towels, she'd say, "Perfect, we needed those." If I sat down, she'd ask, "Can you grab my phone?" The house was new, but the pattern wasn't. So when she announced 20 people were coming, I didn't panic. I prepared. I stripped the extra beds, shook out the blankets. Kinley's youngest sister, Randa, had sensitive skin. She'd complain about rough sheets. I cleaned the bathroom sink with vinegar. Someone would still leave toothpaste stains. I stacked fresh towels, knowing half would disappear by the end. I didn't do it out of fear. I did it like you'd arrange a chessboard before the final move, deliberate, calm, precise. The second page of my notepad wasn't about towels or snacks. It listed rules, guest policies, local laws, occupancy limits. I'd already called a notary. I had the forms ready. All it needed was one more step, and that step would arrive with the crunch of tires on gravel. The first van rolled up just before noon. The second came 10 minutes later, then a sedan, followed by 3 people hauling folding chairs and an energy they hadn't earned. I counted as they poured out, 22. Kinley had miscounted, or she didn't care. The greetings were loud, chaotic. A few nodded my way, no hugs, no nice place. One cousin gave a half wave while dragging a suitcase. Someone opened my fridge without asking. They didn't bring casseroles or housewarming gifts. They brought speakers, coffee tumblers, knotted chargers, and demands disguised as questions. "What's the Wi-Fi code? Only one bathroom down here? You don't have almond milk, do you?" I didn't answer. I stepped aside. They moved like they owned the place, like this wasn't a visit but a takeover. The oldest aunt claimed the master bedroom without a word. Kinley's cousin tossed her bag on the twin bed I'd prepped for Camden's visit next month. When I came back from hanging their coats, 2 teens were bickering over which bed had the better view. I moved to the small den with the pull-out sofa and the lamp that flickered. I gathered my things from the guest room quietly. No one offered to help. No one asked if I minded giving up my space. Kinley caught me carrying my clothes. She gave a pitying smile, the kind people use when they've already decided for you. "It's just 2 weeks," she said, patting my shoulder. "Be flexible." I nodded. Flexibility, I've learned, is only praised when it serves the person asking. I took the smallest room without a word, closed the door firmly, not slamming but with intent. And by evening, I'd finalized the contract no one knew was coming. I placed the receipt on the dining table, nestled between a half-empty ketchup bottle and someone's soggy sandals. $267.94, I said, hands clasped. Just for clarity. Kinley glanced at it, barely pausing as she chewed. "We'll Venmo you later," she said with a chuckle, nudging her cousin who was glued to his phone. No one asked what I'd bought. No one offered to chip in. I watched them pass plates like they were hosting a barbecue. Later, someone spilled cola on the porch cushions. No one cleaned it, they just flipped the cushion and moved on. That night, Kinley's brother tried fixing a dripping faucet after I mentioned it. 10 minutes later, I heard a clang, then him grumbling about shoddy plumbing. The shut-off valve was bent. By the third night, the house smelled like takeout and stale beer. Music blared at midnight from 2 rooms. My kitchen knives were rearranged. The toilet paper holder was ripped off the wall. I stopped asking. I just noted. I cleaned counters, swept pretzel crumbs from the rug, replaced a chipped plate with one from the spare set I'd stashed high up before they arrived. They brought noise and hunger, but mostly they brought entitlement. By day 5, I knew no Venmo was coming. I wasn't waiting for respect either. I stepped onto the porch, still faintly sticky with soda, and opened the folder I'd hidden under the gardening gloves. My fingers didn't waver. The phone rang 3 times before she answered. "Mrs. Marish," the voice said. "You ready?" "Yes," I said. "I'm done hosting." She asked if I had the documents printed. I did, stacked neatly on the dining room sideboard next to the receipt no one had touched. By sunrise, the house was quiet in that heavy way a place feels after being overstuffed. Too many shoes by the door, too many voices lingering from the night before. I taped 2 signs to the front door: private property. Short-term lodging agreement required for all guests. Then I cleared the dining table of coffee mugs and a bowl of soggy cereal, setting out 22 copies of the agreement. Each listed the same terms: $140 per person per night. Damages billed separately, full deposit up front. I placed a pen by each stack. When Kinley came downstairs in a hoodie that wasn't hers, she saw the signs, then the table. "What's this?" she asked, her voice thick with sleep. "A lodging agreement," I said. She gave a sharp laugh. "Okay, hilarious." She skimmed a page, then looked at me. "You're serious?" I didn't answer. I just unlocked the front door and stepped aside. He arrived right on time, Deputy Clem, always punctual. We talked twice this week. Once about noise complaints, once about zoning rules. He stepped inside, nodded at me, and surveyed the room. "Morning," he said. "This the group?" Kinley's face drained of color. "You called the cops on your own family?" I corrected her softly. "No, I called the county. This is enforcement." Camden appeared in the hallway, rubbing his eyes. He opened his mouth but said nothing. I could see the realization hit him, the contracts, the receipts, the timeline showing this wasn't impulsive. Deputy Clem cleared his throat. "Everyone here needs to sign the agreement or leave by tonight." Kinley dropped the paper like it stung. "You're unbelievable." I folded my hands. "You're welcome to stay, Kinley, but not for free." "Not anymore." Her voice broke. "You're really enforcing this?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't blink. "I am," I said, handing Clem the first folder. "It's all here: recorded call, time-stamped message, occupancy limits, neighborhood rules. I've completed my side of the agreements." Camden stepped forward, arms crossed, trying to mediate like always. "Mom, come on, this is overkill. They're just staying for a bit." Clem flipped through the papers, nodding. "Actually," he said, "it's all legal. She gave notice verbally and in writing. These aren't guests, they're occupants without permission." Kinley's cousin muttered about crazy old ladies. Someone else scoffed. Aunt Gwen, I think, shouted, "You're charging us like some airbnb, your family." I turned to her. "No, you're not my family, you're Kinley's. You've never sent me a card, never invited me anywhere. And I've spent 5 days cleaning your messes." Camden's face reddened. I saw him bite his cheek, his tell, when he knew he couldn't fix things. I handed Clem another stack, text message screenshots, emails I'd sent 2 nights ago that no one opened, all organized, numbered, flagged. Kinley stared like she didn't know me. "She recorded the call," she said to no one. "Yes," I said simply. "I did." Silence fell heavy like snow. No one laughed. No one asked for the Wi-Fi password. No one assumed I'd make dinner. I walked to the side table, unlocked the drawer, and pulled out the deposit forms. Clem looked at me. "Should I start collecting signatures?" I didn't smile, but I nodded. By sunset, I heard packing upstairs. The driveway was a mess of dragging suitcases, slammed trunks, and bitter murmurs. The vans were stuffed again, pillows shoved against windows, chairs wedged between bags. Someone knocked over my flower pots. No apology, just hurried steps. One cousin yelled from a car window, "You'll die alone." I didn't react. I stood at the gate holding the clipboard, heavy not with paper but with the weight of choosing myself. Camden walked to the car, Kinley trailing. Her lips were tight, arms crossed. She didn't look at me until she reached the sidewalk. "You made this hostile," she said, her words sharp. I replied calmly, "No, I made it clear." Camden avoided my eyes, got in the car, and stared ahead. I stood there until the vans and sedan vanished around the street's curve. The breeze lifted the edge of the notice still taped to the porch. I went inside. No voices, no footsteps, no music seeping through walls. Silence. I set the clipboard on the counter, wiped a soda ring off the table, took out the trash, and lit a candle I'd saved for after the storm. Its glow danced across the tiles. For the first time in days, I sat at the dining table, not to clean, not to tally costs, not to draft notices, just to sit. The quiet wasn't hollow. It was rich with what they hadn't taken. My dignity, my peace, my space. I reached for the envelope Camden left on the side table, unsealed with his neat, careful handwriting. "I hope you see someday how harsh this was." No signature, just that line like it had the last word. I didn't cry or reread it for hidden warmth. I folded it, slid it into the fireplace, and watched the flames take it. Paper burns like it's begging for mercy. I didn't offer any. I walked through the house slowly. Kinley left towels wadded on the floor. A makeup bag sat in the guest bath, powder dusting the sink. Beds were unmade, sheets half off. A pizza crust lay on a windowsill. I didn't touch anything. Instead, I made a call. By noon the next day, a cleaning crew arrived, 2 women efficient and kind. I made them tea and let them work. I didn't scrub their mess. I documented it, photos, damage logs, hours tracked. Then I sent Kinley an invoice with a copy of the rental agreement, her signature in bold, impatient strokes I still recognized. The email subject, "Final statement for your stay." No emotion, no guilt, just numbers and facts, what she'd ignored when she thought rules didn't apply. I didn't wait for a reply. I closed my laptop, poured strong coffee, and sat by the window overlooking the gravel path. The sky was a soft blue, like a fresh start. In my drawer, I saw the stack of welcome cards I'd bought before they came, still wrapped, still mine. A week passed quietly. No texts, no knocks, no surprise arrivals with coolers and bags. I spent the first morning replanting the front garden. The dirt was packed where chairs had dug in. I pulled weeds, pruned the roses, and reset the stepping stones they'd knocked loose. It felt good, steady, unhurried. No one asked for an extension cord or an extra blanket. I made tea at noon, for myself, in the good mug with the tiny chip I'd always worried someone else would break. A neighbor I hadn't met waved from the sidewalk. Another brought cookies, saying she saw I'd settled in. She didn't pry, just smiled, handed me the tin, and said, "Welcome home." The silence wasn't lonely, it was healing. It eased my shoulders, filled my lungs. No voices echoing, no music thumping, no one asking for gluten-free snacks or a spare charger. The sink stayed clean. The laundry basket stayed empty. I watered the plants, straightened the chairs, and opened the windows because I wanted to. No one complained about the temperature or demanded a better meal plan. No one called me stubborn for wanting respect in my own home. The house didn't feel too big, it felt perfect. No calls from Camden, no texts from Kinley, but I didn't feel erased. I felt free. Sometimes peace doesn't come with fanfare, it comes with calm. I sat in the garden at dusk, watching a squirrel chase its shadow. Looking up at the wind chimes I'd finally hung, I saw something I hadn't in years. They moved only when the breeze allowed. Kinley called 2 nights ago, then twice yesterday. No voicemails, just texts, some polite, some sharp, one saying, "We need to talk." Camden sent a message, "Can we sort this out?" It's been long enough. I didn't reply, not out of anger, but because I was done. This house wasn't a hotel or a doormat. It wasn't built to carry others' demands. It was mine, and it finally felt like it. The locks are new. The porch sign now reads, "By appointment only, not out of spite, but clarity." I keep the guest room neat, but I don't pretend it's open. I cook for myself, shop without others' preferences in mind. My days are quiet, my nights are mine. I spoke to my lawyer 2 days after the last car left. We updated the deed, not ownership, but a clause, inheritance contingent on demonstrated respect. Not revenge, but structure, a guide for those who thought my quiet was weakness. Kinley will probably call again. Camden, too. They won't get it, not at first. When people are used to taking, they see boundaries as betrayal. But this isn't a fight. I'm not battling, I'm protecting. The house glows with morning light. The plants are blooming again. The wind chimes hum when they choose. Respect doesn't need permission to stand. It just stops asking for approval. I closed the folder of notarized papers, locked it in the drawer with the key box, and turned back to the light.